all modern cars are on all the time.
Okay, Warren, we're having a little bit of fun at Alan's place here, and you're in his 1907 Renault.
Yes.
What brought you to Alan's the other day? You had a problem, and you came to Alan to see if he could help.
I couldn't get my Lancia started.
Okay.
I went out to start it up, and it was just totally dead. And I've got a pretty nice battery charger. I put that on there, and it just wouldn't charge at all. It just kept repeating, attach the leads, and I had attached the leads and gone back and checked. So I was pretty frustrated as to what to do because I've used that charger. That's a pretty nice charger. I've had good luck with it. So I was pretty confused as to what to do. Talking to Alan, Alan said, let's take a closer look at this and see what's going on. So that's how I got here.
What, from your perspective, you've dealt with a lot of batteries in your years. What did you find Warren dealing with?
Well, the exciting thing for me is there's remedies for it. So the first step is you disconnect the battery. You disconnect it completely from the system. You bring it over here, and then I gave him a battery. This is a lithium car battery. It'll start a 500 cubic inch motor. I gave him this and two leads, jumper cables, basically. So I wanted his battery out of the system completely. I want no charger hooked to his car, and I want his hot and ground on that, and then hook it up in the system and see if he can see any residual, telltales, any tail lights on, any brake lights on, any buzzing in the background, any fuel pump. Can he tell if there's anything? Because he knows there's no juice whatsoever, and the threshold of his battery is not met, which means it's below 9 volts or below 1 volt. It's below what the modern charger does.
Okay.
So he takes this home, and then he finds that his taillights are on. So that's not a problem at all. You don't need to buy a new battery.
Right. So in other words, to put another way, when you hook that up and the taillights come on and go, oh, I left my lights on.
Right.
That's why my battery's dead.
But he couldn't tell that by putting his fancy charger on there. Right. The charger just said, not doing anything.
I'm not helping you today.
No. If you have a collector car, you can't use usually a modern charger because modern chargers have a threshold. They got to be from 1 to 9 volts of voltage. And from that point on, it'll charge, but nothing down lower.
Right.
And then the same thing, if you have a modern electronic car, you don't use an old charger because the old charger, when you hook it up, when you hook your leads up, it's producing 18 or 19 volts, if not 20 volts. And then the modern electronics, can't take that. And you say, well, I don't have the engine on, but all modern cars are on all the time. There's electronic systems that are on, even if you don't see any lights on and nothing's making a sound, and you put 20 volts or 18 or 19 volts of DC on an open battery, i.e. a really dead battery doesn't offer any load, you can burn up that. Once you have ascertained that battery is probably good, and all we need to do is put an old style charger on it, to bring it up from 0 volts or 2 or 3 volts or some amount of low voltage to up to 10 volts, then his electronic charger will work. But there's so many times that really good batteries are thrown away because they're put in collector cars because, well, my charger won't charge it. It must be bad. I'll just get a new battery.
Right.
Well, by doing a little bit extra work, and then the next thing you do is once you charge it on an old style charger, even to 6 or 8 volts, and you put a load tester on it, which we'll show you in a few minutes, it'll already show 100 amps, even at 5 or 6 volts. So you know it's going to work.
Right.
So right now, before we do any charging to his old battery, we'll measure the voltage on his battery. His battery right now is 0.064 volts. So that's basically nothing. Okay. So if I put the load tester on there, I have nothing. Okay.
It is a dead battery.
I'm going to put his charger on. Okay, I put his charger on there. It is duly connected to the battery. It
says, please put the clamps on.
So we did. It's not working at all.
Aha!
Okay.
It's not working.
Okay, it's not working because it hasn't met the threshold electronically. So we'll just disconnect this, the modern, and we'll unplug it so it doesn't get shorted. Now we'll connect an old style charger.
Oh, we saw the needle wiggle. There it is.
Okay, we have some charge, and that's only 10 seconds worth, voltage going in. So let's just measure the voltage real quick. Okay, so what I'm doing is, I'm measuring it's 12.25 volts.
Mm-hmm.
But if I disconnect the battery from the charger and just put the battery charger only, it's going to measure a potential higher than that. Okay, so let's keep it on here for a little bit.
Yep. Alan, as long as we're talking about batteries and we're letting Warren's battery charge for a minute.
Yep.
You have some interesting batteries in your collection here, and I think it'd be great to look at a little bit of history on batteries.
Yep. So the battery that Warren has in here that we're charging, it's not a battery. It's a collection of cells.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 6 cells in that. And then the cells are like batteries that are standing straight up by each other. Like here's an 1897 Dion-Bouton explosion race trike. It's the oldest production motor vehicle in North America. It runs on hydrocarbons, but still it's a gasoline type. It's not an electric vehicle.
Uh-huh.
It runs on 8 volts or 12 volts. And these are the cells. And these cells are exactly what Warren has in that car battery.
Interesting.
So this vehicle here has 5 2-volt cells. So this makes a 10-volt battery. So it could be enclosed and be called a 10-volt battery.
Uh-huh.
But in this case, you're seeing the cells that are just separate.
Right. That is so cool.
But so that's 130 years ago.
Right.
Is exactly the same thing as Warren's battery that he has now, that he thinks is a battery. It's actually a container with 6 cells in it.
Right. Okay.
And then the things that can go bad in a battery, besides it not being charged, there can be the connections between the batteries, i.e. the wires in the old style.
Yep.
Or it could be, in Warren's case, is the manufacture of the cells. Between the cells, the connection is made, and that can sulfate. That connection can break down and not go from one cell to the next. All you have to have is one Christmas light not work, and you don't have any Christmas lights. All you have is one cell not make connection. Your battery is not a battery anymore.
Right.
And then we can look at something another, 16 or 17 years newer than this, get up to the modern time. So let's look at my 1913 Bugatti.
Okay. Yes.
So this is my 1913 Bugatti. It's got an Exide battery. Well, it says Exide, and that's a battery container. But if you take this apart, my Bugatti runs on 8 volts.
Okay.
So the battery is that box, and the Exide is the case for it, and you replace the batteries. Same thing, 2 volts per cell, same thing as Warren's modern battery. And this is, not that old. It's only 112 or 13 years old, but the same thing.
All right. Do you have anything older sitting around?
Yeah, a little bit. Here are some pretty darn old batteries.
Okay.
Benjamin Franklin had older ones, but those are from the 1860s to the 1870s. Those are called wet cells. And still, each of those wet cells, which it looks like a jar to you,
Yep.
produces about 2 volts. I could give you 4 more of the wet cells. We could charge the wet cells, connect our copper leads, and we could run Warren's Lancia on some 1860s, 1870 technology batteries. In fact, we probably should do that.
I kind of all of a sudden want to do that.
Yeah, I think we should just do that, just so Warren knows on a backup situation, we can always, refer back a ways.
1980, 1880, whatever.
Right.
Okay.
It's the same thing.
Right.
2 volts per cell basically is what they've always been.
Uh-huh.
They could be considered 1.5, but it's basically a couple volts is a cell.
Yeah.
There's no battery that's 12 volts.
Okay, right. Interesting, yeah.
Even if it's a new Tesla. The Teslas are fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
They got thousands of batteries, and they all build up together for the voltage they're using. They're cells.
Right, yeah. That's wild. And we were also had noticed your telephone here on the wall.
Yep.
That even has the same
batteries. So those are the same 1.5 volt, 2 volt cells that makes up that. And that phone, my phone is in the 1880s, 1890s.
Okay. Yeah. So people wonder why the phone was so big. I think a big part of the size was because of the batteries.
Yep. Yep.
Look at that. That's pretty wild. We might have to do a video on a phone sometime later. As long as we're going to see the Trike, we've got to see it looking just right.
Yeah,
That's really
right.
cool. Well, we put a little bit of a charge on it. Let's see where we are now, Alan.
Yep. So we've got 10 minutes or so worth of charge.
Yeah.
Okay. So this, again, old school charger. We don't have to keep running the old school charger now. We can disconnect. But it looks like since the old school charger starts from 0, literally, and it doesn't care at 0, at 0, it'll charge because it doesn't measure the battery at all.
That's the key, isn't it?
That's the key. It measures, it doesn't measure it. It's just going to produce voltage.
Right.
Like you're connecting a DC arc welder to it. It's just producing voltage and current.
Yeah.
So, but his modern one won't do that. It looks at it. It kind of tests the water by measuring the voltage and then decides whether to emit some voltage and some current.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we can disconnect this one.
Okay.
So we'll do it the right way. The right way, well, one way is for me to get in the other end of the room and have Warren disconnect the leads with me in a safe distance. I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could just disconnect it.
Yes.
Because you don't want to disconnect this with a juice being applied.
Right.
Because there is sparks. Now, my garage is large, so the amount of gaseous explosive material right above the battery, since my room is large, is not so big.
Right.
But if this was in a small car, like a Lancia car, you have that,
The smell.
that smell, which is the parts that can blow up. You don't want to disconnect your lead. In my life, I've only had 2 batteries blow up, and I'm in my 70s, so it's not
You're doing well.
It happens a lot.
And I don't even notice the scars very much.
When a battery charges, it emits the gas. It emits a chemical composition, and that is explosive.
Okay.
That would almost, for my 1897 vehicle, that explosive gas might even give it combustion where it might even make the car run for a few feet.
Wow.
I mean, the stuff you're smelling is explosive.
Yeah.
It's flammable.
Yeah.
When you charge a battery.
Yeah. Okay. That's a fair warning.
And we can't smell it in here because it's a big room. But
Right.
so now I'm going to connect up his, and it wouldn't matter on a modern electronic one because it won't emit any voltage till it knows it's connected well.
Right.
So this one is safe.
It's a safety feature. Yes.
Yeah. But we don't necessarily like safe because it wouldn't charge the battery.
Yeah.
But we'll still do it the right way.
Okay.
We'll connect it up, and then we'll make sure the polarity is right. Yeah, I did it right again.
Okay, here we go. Oh, it lit up this time.
Okay, so now with 10 minutes of charging on the old school,
Yeah.
it says we have 10% of the batteries charged.
Huh.
And on his, it's measuring 11.5 volts.
Interesting.
So this won't start a car, but we've already, with just charging it for 10 minutes, I can for sure guarantee that it'll work or not by using the load tester.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so right now it's measuring 11 volts, which is what his battery charger said, and I've got no current because I haven't done the load. So I'm going to crank the load in, and if I see 100 amps, of load, even at 10% charge, the battery's going to be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
And it might even be higher than that. So now we'll crank the load in.
Okay. Let's see what we get.
And we got 100 amps.
Right.
So the battery is not sulfated. It'll work fine for his car.
Okay, cool.
So now we just disconnected the load tester and put his digital charger back on and let it charge for 4 or 5 hours. Okay, so it's charging.
Good. Good job. Well, Alan, thank you for giving us a little overview on battery charging and dead batteries and battery chargers. I mean, there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, there is.
So,
it's not as simple as you thought.
Yeah. We can get a little less frustrated if we keep an old charger along with our old car.
Yep, keep an old charger.
Okay, good deal. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.